The watcher in the valley. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It drummed against the cabin's tin roof, a relentless rhythm that drowned out the world beyond the valley. I was 19, on a solo retreat in a rented cabin in rural Oregon, chasing solitude after a brutal semester. The listing promised peace, a place to unplug, with no neighbors for miles. But that night, as the storm raged, I realized I wasn't alone. The cabin sat at the edge of a dense pine forest, perched on a ridge overlooking a misty valley. It was small but cozy, a single-story structure with creaky wooden floors, a wood stove, and a wide picture window facing the trees. The nearest town was a 40-minute drive down a winding gravel road, and my phone had no signal. I didn't mind. I wanted the isolation, the chance to read, write, and clear my head. My parents were hesitant, but I convinced them I'd be fine. I'd brought enough food for a week, a stack of books and a notebook for journaling. The plan was simple. No distractions, just me and the quiet. Around 10 p.m., I heard it, a sharp tap against the picture window. I froze, my eyes darting to the glass. The lantern's light reflected back, turning the window into a mirror. All I could see was my own pale face, wide-eyed, staring back. I told myself it was a branch, knocked loose by the wind. But the sound came again. Tap, 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 slow and deliberate, like someone testing the glass. I set the book down and stood, my heart thumping. The cabin was small, just the living area, a kitchenette, and a bedroom in the back. I grabbed the flashlight from the counter and flicked it on, sweeping the beam across the window. The rain streaked down in sheets, blurring the world outside. Nothing, just darkness and the endless sway of pine branches. I laughed at myself, nerves jangling. "Get a grip," I muttered, turning back to the couch. But then it came again. Tap, tap, and this time I heard something else. A low, guttural hum, like someone murmuring under their breath. It was faint, almost swallowed by the storm, but it was there. My stomach twisted. I clicked off the flashlight and stood still, listening. The hum stopped. Silence, except for the rain. I crept to the window, keeping low, and peered through a corner of the glass. The beam of my flashlight caught a flicker of movement, something pale retreating into the trees. I stumbled back, my breath shallow. "It's just an animal," I told myself. A deer maybe, or a raccoon spooked by the storm. But the hum wasn't animal. It was human. I checked the door, making sure the deadbolt was secure, then dragged a chair against it for good measure. The windows were latched, but they felt flimsy, like they'd give with one good push. I sat back on the couch, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, and waited. Minutes passed. The rain kept pounding. I was starting to think I'd imagined it when the tapping returned, faster this time, coming from the back of the cabin, near the bedroom. My blood ran cold. The bedroom had a small window, barely big enough for a person to crawl through. But it faced the forest, where the trees grew so close they scraped the walls. I grabbed a kitchen knife and edged toward the bedroom, my socks silent on the wooden floor. The tapping stopped as I reached the doorway. I shone the flashlight inside. The bed was neatly made, my backpack on the floor, the window dark. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. The glass was fogged with condensation, but there, pressed against it, was a handprint. It was small, almost childlike, but the fingers were unnaturally long, the nails jagged and dark. My breath caught. I backed out, slamming the bedroom door shut, and wedged a chair under the knob. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, listening to every creak and groan of the cabin. The tapping didn't return, but the hum did, faint and fleeting, drifting through the walls like a ghost. By morning, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I checked the bedroom window again. The handprint was gone, washed away by the storm. Or so I told myself. I should have left then, packed my bag, hiked to my car, and driven back to civilization. But I was stubborn. I'd paid for the week, and I wasn't about to let some weird noises scare me off. I convinced myself it was nothing, a prankster maybe, or my imagination running wild. I spent the day cleaning, restocking the fire, and avoiding the bedroom. By afternoon, the sky cleared and the valley sparkled under a weak sun. I decided to hike the property, looking for signs of whoever or whatever had been outside. The cabin sat on a 5-acre lot bordered by a shallow creek and a barbed wire fence. Beyond the fence was national forest, unmarked and wild. I found nothing unusual at first, just mud and pine needles. But near the creek, I spotted footprints. They were bare, human-shaped, but too small, like a child's, with deep impressions that suggested weight. They led from the creek toward the cabin, stopping at the edge of the clearing, where the grass gave way to gravel. I followed them back to the creek, where they vanished into the water. My skin prickled. I scanned the trees, half expecting to see someone watching. The forest was still, too still, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. I hurried back to the cabin, locking the door behind me. That night, I kept the lantern off, hoping darkness would make me less of a target. I sat in the living area, knife on the coffee table, listening. Around midnight, the hum returned. It was louder now, coming from the back of the cabin. I gripped the knife, my palms sweaty. The hum grew into words, not clear, but fragments, like a chant. Come, see, out. My great invention did diesel. The voice was male, deep and rough, like gravel. I crept to the window, my heart pounding. The hum stopped. Silence. Then a knock, loud, insistent. I opened the door a crack. "What do you want?" the voice demanded. Male again. I hesitated, then shut the door and turned the lock. "I need your help," he said. The voice was familiar now, low and urgent. "There's someone outside." I froze, the knife trembling in my hand. "What?" I whispered, backing away from the door. He knocked again, harder. "Open the door," he shouted. "I know you're in there." My stomach lurched. This wasn't a prank. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. "There's a man outside," I said. "He's trying to get in." The line went quiet for a moment. "Stay there," the operator said. "The police are on their way." I crept to the window and peered out. A man stood on the porch, his face shadowed, but his outline clear. Tall, wiry, with a hood pulled low. He pounded on the door again. "Open up," he yelled. "I just need to talk." I backed away, my heart racing. "Go away," I shouted through the door. "The police are coming." The man stopped knocking. Silence. Then a heavy thud, and the door rattled in its frame. "Open this door or I'll break it down," he roared. I grabbed the knife from the table and ran to the bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I dialed my parents' number. "Mom, there's someone trying to break in," I said, my voice low and panicked. "Stay there," she said. "We're calling the police." She hung up. I crouched by the bed listening. The front door rattled again, then stopped. Heavy footsteps crossed the porch. "He's gone," the operator said. I exhaled, my body trembling. "Thank God," I whispered. I was so scared. The police arrived 10 minutes later, their lights flashing through the rain. I told them everything: the tapping, the hum, the handprint, the footprints by the creek. They searched the property, but found no one. Probably some drifter, one officer said. We'll follow up with the owner. The owner, a grizzled man named Amos, showed up later that morning. He looked shaken when I described the man. Sounds like the Watcher, he said. He's been around here for years, scaring folks. Never hurts anyone, just watches. The Watcher? I said, my voice barely steady. Amos nodded. That's what they call him. A ghost, some say. Others think he's just a crazy old hermit who lives in the woods. Harmless, but creepy as hell. I swallowed hard. He was holding a knife. Amos's face darkened. That's not good. We'll need a full description. I gave it to them. Wild hair, filthy clothes, pale skin, deranged eyes, a knife tapping the glass. They wrote it down, asked questions, and left. My parents arrived that afternoon, pale and shaken themselves. You sure you're okay? My mom asked, hugging me tightly. Yeah, I said, just freaked out. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain, the knife on my nightstand. The tapping came again, soft and rhythmic. I sat up, my heart pounding. Who's there? I called. No answer, just the tapping, faster now. I grabbed the knife and crept to the window. He was there, the Watcher, standing in the rain, staring at me through the glass. His smile was wide, unhinged, his eyes gleaming with a madness that made my blood run cold. He tapped the knife against the window, then vanished into the night. I didn't see him again. The police called the next day to say they'd found no trace of him. Probably long gone, one officer said. We'll keep looking. I told my parents about the hum, the chant-like words, the way he moved. Slow, swaying, like he was dancing to music only he could hear. They said it sounded like a ritual, something cultish. He's dangerous, my dad said. Stay away from the windows. For weeks, I checked the locks twice, slept with the knife under my pillow, and jumped at every sound. The tapping came back one night, faint but unmistakable. I looked out the window, but no one was there, just the rain and the dark. The cabin's owner called a month later. No sign of him, he said, but I found something weird. He paused. There was a symbol carved into a tree near the creek. Looked like a circle with a cross in it. Mean anything to you? I froze. Yeah, I said. I've seen it before. The symbol from my dream, the one I'd drawn in my notebook after that first night. A circle with a cross, like a warped sun. Amos's voice was grim. It's a ward, keeps the Watcher away. You're safe now. I didn't feel safe. I felt hunted. The dream started a week after I left the cabin. Every night, the same image. The Watcher at the window, tapping, smiling, his knife glinting in the dark. I'd wake up sweating, my heart racing, the knife in my hand. I stopped going outside at night. I checked the windows a dozen times before bed. I kept the blinds closed. 3 months later, I saw him again. I was in town, grabbing coffee at a diner. He was across the street, leaning against a lamppost, watching me. That same smile, those wild eyes. He didn't move, just stared. I ducked into an alley and ran, my coffee spilling on my hand. When I looked back, he was gone. I never told anyone about the dreams. They'd think I was crazy. But I started carrying the knife everywhere. I'd sit in my car at night, the blade on my lap, scanning the shadows. I moved out of my parents' house a year later, into a small apartment in town. I thought the distance would help. It didn't. The tapping came again one night, months later. I was alone, reading in bed. Tap, tap, tap. I grabbed the knife and crept to the window. He was there, in the alley, staring up at me. His smile was gone, but his eyes were still mad. He raised the knife, tapped it against his palm, and disappeared into the shadows. I called the police again. They found nothing. Probably just a nightmare, my mom said, stroking my hair. You're okay now. But I wasn't okay. The Watcher was still out there, and I knew he'd come back. The cabin became my prison. I checked the locks 100 times a day. I slept with the knife under my pillow. The tapping came every night, a relentless reminder that I wasn't alone. I saw him in town, at the grocery store, in the park, always watching, always smiling. One night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I grabbed the knife and ran to the living room. The window was shattered, and he was inside, the Watcher. His knife gleamed in the moonlight as he stepped toward me, his smile wider than ever. "You can't hide," he whispered. I raised the knife, my hand steady. "Get out," I said. He laughed, a low guttural sound. "You know why I'm here." I nodded, my voice cold. "I know." He lunged. I stabbed. The knife sank into his chest, and he fell back, his eyes wide with shock. Blood pooled on the floor as he stared at me, his smile fading at last. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. The police said I'd killed him. Self-defense, they called it. My parents cried, my mom holding my hand, my dad pacing the room. "You're safe now," the nurse said, checking my chart. But I wasn't safe. The Watcher was gone, but his shadow lingered. Every night, I heard the tapping. Every night, I saw his face. And every night, I checked the windows, knowing he'd never stop watching.